Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Solo Queue. I'm your host, Michael Damiani. This week, I'm joined by Stealth. How's it going, Stealth? And thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me. It's been a long time.
Yeah, it has been a long time. And as we've been doing with Solo Queue, we start off with a little bit of an introduction so that our viewers and listeners can get to know you a little bit better. So, for those of you who may not be familiar with you, Stealth, could you give us a little bit of your background?
Sure. I'm known as Stealth40K on Twitter, and on all social media. I'm known as a news guy for Nintendo, RPGs, all gaming. And yeah, I'm very excited for today's topic.
Heck yeah. You mentioned the Nintendo stuff. We did have some Nintendo news today, though. It is
Yeah.
Mario Day, so we got a little bit about that. How'd you like some of that news, real quick?
It was actually kind of unusual how Nintendo did it. They don't usually drop release dates without trailers.
Yes.
And that's what they did. They basically dropped like the end cards of the trailer, and I feel like we might be getting it this week, just not on Sunday. Um, but yeah, I'm very excited to have a release date for Paper Mario, Thousand Year Door remake, one of my favorite games of all time. Um, yeah, now Switch has release dates up through the mid-year. Pretty much
Yes.
a game every month.
So it's Paper Mario in May,
May
Luigi's
and
Mansion 2 in July
June.
or
June.
June. June, okay. And then some Mario games are coming to Nintendo Switch Online like on the
In 2
12th.
days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then
Um,
a Mario movie sequel. That was
yeah.
like the biggest thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, everyone knew that was gonna happen. I mean, the Mario movie is the second most successful animated film of all time. You make a sequel. Like I wasn't
Yeah.
really worried about that. I guess I don't know how movies are made, but like 2026 seems a good while away to announce it, but maybe that's just what they wanted to do for, Mario Day. Um I've seen some speculation that it might not be an actual sequel because they didn't use the word sequel. They used like new movie in the Mario universe, but we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, that's a no brainer.
True. I also think that's just like Nintendo wants to be secretive as much as possible. And this is, we saw how the first Mario movie was unveiled and the how they meted out the new info through like the Mario movie directs that gave us like new trailers. So I think it'll be like the same thing. I feel like the way they announced it, I would wager it's like a sequel or some kind of like proper follow up. Even
Yeah,
yeah, but who knows?
I mean, I would love a Luigi's Mansion movie, but that's
Yes.
but I would feel like it was that if it was coming out in October, not April. Like April isn't a Luigi's Mansion kind of month, but
Mhm.
um yeah, it's just a no-brainer. Now Miyamoto is gonna have 3 movies under his belt.
Yeah. Well, Nintendo evolving to be a media company rather than just a game company. That vision is coming to pass. So, you know, anything to like, help them expand a bit. Now it's, the wait to begins to see, anything more concrete on that live action Zelda movie, which is the one I'm more concerned about since I'm pretty okay with the Mario movie. It was, cute, charming, delightful, and I imagine anything else they do will be just fine, but that live action Zelda, I have so many questions, probably like everyone else. I'm just like,
Yeah.
don't know about that one, but we'll
Yeah,
see.
I mean, I can wrap my head around how you can tell a Mario story in an hour and a half, 2 hours. I don't know how you do Zelda in that short a time because, yeah, I just they'll have to impress me, and they'll have to prove it to me.
hmm Besides the Nintendo news, we are actually here today to talk about the future of Final Fantasy. More specifically, what we'd like to see, what we think might happen with the next mainline Final Fantasy installment, which should be Final Fantasy XVII. And the impetus for this is kind of like in the past year, we had Final Fantasy XVI come out, the next big mainline entry. We had Rebirth just come out recently, so we've had two of the highest profile Final Fantasy games come out. We've also had like several other Square Enix titles and RPGs come out since, so there's a lot to like process. And before we actually get into the specifics of this, Stealth, I'd like you to just give us like a little bit of an update where you are, sorry, in Rebirth right now, since I know you haven't finished it, but where exactly are you at, and what are kind of like your brief thoughts so far?
So, I'm currently in Cosmo Canyon. Just finishing up all the remaining side quests, but then I'm ready to head to Nibelheim. Um, so I don't exactly know how close I am to the end, but I know I'm closer to the end than the beginning. But overall, love the game. I tweeted I put like 75 hours into it so far, in like a week. So, or like a week and a half. So yeah, definitely loving it. Yeah, and I'll be sad when it's over.
Yeah, I share that same sentiment. I mean, I'm glad, people are putting in so much time. I was curious if people were going to put in as much time as I did when I was doing the review for it. And I think, and then maybe the tweet didn't wasn't seen by as many people, but I was trying to illustrate how much this game just consumed me. Like I didn't want to play anything else. I just wanted to keep playing this game. But this game kept me away from probably the game I love the most in general, Final Fantasy XIV. I didn't step foot into that game. I didn't log into that game for like 2 weeks straight. And the longest I'd ever
Yeah,
been away from that game was maybe like 4 days before for like various trips and stuff. So I was like, you kept me away from a game like I freaking loved to death for 2 weeks. A game where you're supposed to log in daily to do stuff. And like, I didn't care about that world at all. Like, hats off to like this game for doing that. That's like insane.
yeah. I mean, I'm going for what I call 100% within reason. I'm not going for number one in every mini game. I'm doing all the side quests. I'm doing all the regional things. And yeah, it's taking a long time to finish that. And I'm kind of going through the same thing. A couple of days ago, I just got another really anticipated game. It's still in the plastic, Unicorn Overlord.
Okay.
Um,
Yes.
so I have that, haven't touched it because I'm still in like full Final Fantasy VII Rebirth mode, and I've heard like that's gonna be like the ogre battle Fire Emblem mashup of my dreams, but it's still in plastic and I haven't touched it.
I streamed it the other day for about 6 hours. So I just played the opening 6 hours. And I have to say, it made me a believer in it.
Yeah.
I'm not as experienced and familiar with the Tactics Ogre series, but I was definitely picking up on like what they were basically doing Fire Emblem style wise. And I was like, oh, so this, and chat was pointing out, well, this is more Tactics Ogre stuff. I'm like, so it really is a fusion of this. Like, this is awesome. I don't know if Tactics Ogre does the thing with like a world map where it felt more like old Shining Force, where you move along like a
Yeah,
world map, and when you start a battle, it becomes like confined to that part of the world map. It's not
kind of.
random, but it's structured
Yeah.
in Unicorn Overlord where it's like stages. Anyway, I don't want to say too much, but yes,
Yeah.
I was
I
like,
mean,
this is cool.
the yeah, I mean the Fire Emblem influence is apparent. You have a blue-haired swordsman who's a lord class. That's Fire Emblem. So
Yeah, they have like the bond stuff, like you develop the relationships. Like there were so many things, like recruitment stuff. Was it like yeah, like it's all there. But like I was just surprised at like the world map, like the amount of like things you could like explore and do and activities. And I guess my question was like, how is it going to keep evolving over the course of it? Because I think I'm at like it said I was like 9% complete with the game. I was like, okay, well, I mean, can they keep this up for another like 10 10 times like whatever seven like 60 hours it's going to be, whatever it's like, can you keep it up for the course of like 60 hours? We'll see. But
yeah.
yeah, like very impressive game to look forward to. But as you said, Rebirth is kind of like this like black hole right now where like everything's just being sucked in and can't escape from it, so can't
It's
blame
like
it.
what happened. I mean, what happens, but you want to see it happen, so you want to keep going. This
Yes,
is how they do it. How they do everything. Without
exactly.
spoilers. But yeah, so I'm not playing anything else until I beat it.
I think that's like the biggest like sticking point, or sorry, the biggest draw is that it. They even said it's gonna follow a lot of the beats pretty similarly, but it's what are the moments are gonna change? Where did they expand stuff, and where do they actually change up things for the different? And that's like, especially like as us as veterans playing through it, catching those moments like, oh, that's different. That's not how it played out, or wow, they really expanded this part. It's like, holy crap, like they did way more than I thought they were gonna do with this. And I was just like constantly blown away by how much they fit into this game. Now, I remember you pointed out when we were talking a little bit earlier that if you don't do all the side stuff, the open world stuff, it's obviously a shorter experience. But I still think even with that, it's still probably like a 35 hour game, even just trying to
Yeah.
stick to the story, which is insane.
and it might be harder too because you're not getting a lot of that experience. So you aren't leveling up as much without doing a lot of the side stuff. So that's kind of a hard mode run, not doing the side content.
Yeah.
But you are missing a lot of the world building. But yeah, overall, it's a very, very special game right now.
hmm So the topic about the future of Final Fantasy, I want to start with a news headline that just dropped. It did come up like in our Easy Allies podcast where we were like, someone couldn't find a source at the time, but like we've since seen that the report of the sales figures in Japan for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and also following the sales figures for Final Fantasy 16 and then remake before it, it does look like, based on that sales data, that the Final Fantasy series is been in a bit of a decline in Japan, in terms of their sales numbers. And I guess we could start there. Do you feel like that's just like in like why do you think that is? Because I think maybe that will shed some light on whether this is a like brand problem or maybe something a different issue. But yeah, do you have any like thoughts on why you think this is happening? And do you think there's anything that can be done on Square Enix's side to maybe remedy this going forward?
Well, can anything be done? It actually depends on what I'm about to say, but Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, in terms of like mainline games, I think had like the second or third like lowest launch ever for Final Fantasy in Japan. But high for PS5. So what that tells me is it's not really a Final Fantasy problem. I think it's a PS5 problem. Um, where Switch is just so dominant in Japan. Games can do okay on PS5. They can, there's a limit to how good they can do. If you launch a game on Switch, there's no guarantee it's going to be a huge hit, but you have a chance to hit like a million sold at launch. Depending on the franchise and the game and all that. So yeah, I don't know if Final Fantasy is in decline. Rather, all the big hits are on Switch, and that's where the massive install base is. Like Switch is the best-selling system of all time in Japan right now. And software is still selling very, very well. Like the week Final Fantasy VII Rebirth launched, it was number one. Then 2 through 10 places was all Switch games. So can Square fix it? Sure, you could make Final Fantasy 17 multi-platform. You could launch it on, PS5, Switch, PC, like a lot of big Japanese games actually do. To hit it all. But will they, if their mantra is push tech, push hardware, are they going to want to do multi-plat for Final Fantasy? That's to be determined. But yeah, I mean, I think if they want to see like big sales, especially in Japan again, the game has to be on Switch. That's basically all there is to it.
Yeah, I think that's like a pretty good, insight into that. I would definitely agree with that. I was hoping this is what you would say, that it's being restricted to a single platform, and the platform that maybe like the best sellers aren't really appearing on anymore is kind of like they're just being a little bit hamstrung there.
Yeah,
They
I
have
mean, if you think about this, like Dragon Quest Monsters 3 had a bigger physical launch than Final Fantasy VII Rebirth in Japan. So if side games of Dragon Quest are doing better than a huge game like Rebirth, then it's a platform problem. It's not a serious problem.
Yeah, I agree. And so I do agree that if it was multi-platform, even in Japan, like especially on Switch in Japan and maybe PC day and date, obviously, that it would just naturally have a higher sales number. So I guess the next follow-up question is like, even doing this, they're obviously it would increase sales. But do you think maybe there's something more they should be doing to increase sales? That like because like we've seen some series that have like broken out and hidden like maybe like higher echelons. Like for example, Zelda has gone in a different direction. With Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, it's achieved a new level of sales that that series had never achieved, and that's an aging series as well. Almost like they're about it in Final Fantasy are about the same age. So it's like Zelda found a way to embrace a new direction, and I guess that's kind of like the real topic here is content wise, structure wise. Should the Final Fantasy series try something different going forward beyond just being multi-platform, getting that multi-platform sales boost to potentially increase its appeal to a wider audience. And I will like end that by saying like even Naoki Yoshida was 16 said he really wished he didn't have to call it Final Fantasy 16 because he understands like it's difficult to sell a game in such a long running series to the regular people because they're just confused about where do I start and everything like that. So yeah, they're definitely aware of that. But yeah, what do you think about that?
So there's a few things. You could technically pull the Mortal Kombat and get rid of the numbers, and reboot. Um, that way you would kind of give the impression of things are fresh. You don't have to know 16 games before you jump into a new game. Um, so there's always that route. And I always think about Bravely Default. So Bravely Default, kind of a Final Fantasy game. It's not named Final Fantasy. Um, if they want to keep pushing the tech forward, more actiony Final Fantasy games, I think that's fine. But I thought that they maybe potentially missed an opportunity not making like a classic Final Fantasy game in name and content and putting it on every platform. Um, Obviously the quality has to be really, really high, but I feel like that would go over. I feel like a turn-based main Final Fantasy game would go over very well if like the vision, if it just looked amazing. Um, so I honestly think like that's a direction I would like them to go in. Um, I bought Final Fantasy 16. I enjoyed it. But yeah, it was more of an action game. And if that's one direction they want to go in, that's fine. I would personally be excited about a more turn-based direction.
Okay. That's a good point because that
Yeah.
is the legacy of Final Fantasy is that it started off as a turn-based system. They kind of brought that back with the Pixel Remaster collection and reintroduced everybody to it. Obviously, those old games have been re-released countless times, but that was like their most recent effort. But we've also seen other big franchises that kind of like reinvented themselves by going in a different direction that was maybe a little bit like more old-fashioned. More specifically referencing Prince of Persia, which ditched like the 3D, more open environments for a more side-scrolling Metroidvania presentation with The Lost Crown earlier this year, and we saw at least critically it went over very well. Like people were really receptive to that. I imagine that cost way less to develop too, and that was a game that was more easy to port to different platforms than a game that's pushing the cutting edge of technology like Final Fantasy usually do, which means it's usually probably not going to be on Nintendo's platform. So is that, that could be something they could pursue, like embracing like, the Bravely Default or Octopath Traveler or the 2D HD style and trying to do a turn-based Final Fantasy that's just as long and rich in content as you'd expect. But yeah, like I guess my question is like I think that's totally doable and I'm surprised they won't try that at some point. But do you think that's like, is that going to, are there going to be people who like complain about that? Obviously, but like sales wise, do you think that is the way to go, or do you like think that shouldn't even be part of the conversation? Like, yeah, I mean, there's a lot to juggle here, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, look, if they want to keep pushing the tech forward, PS5 exclusives, like I really have no problem with that. You just have to understand that sales are probably going to be lower. Um, because it's one platform and because especially in Japan, PS5 isn't doing terribly great. It's doing okay. Um, and I don't know why we can't have both. Like, I don't know why we can't have both styles. Like, why we can't have something closer to the classics, maybe a class system, an HD 2D. Look, some people say I see it all the time that they're sick of the HD 2D style. I'm not. I love it. So if you made like a brand new Final Fantasy turn-based RPG, it's going to sell very, very well. I mean, I feel like a game like that could sell 1 million units on Switch alone. Besides the other platforms. Um, so yeah, I mean, it really depends on what they want to do. Obviously, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is not going to come to Switch. Probably not going to come. Maybe will probably come to PC at some point. Um, but usually when we've seen like these big kind of sales success stories, it is a change in genre. Or a genre that the series hasn't seen in a long time. I think about Kirby and the Forgotten Land. They made their like the first 3D Kirby game a la 3D Mario, best selling Kirby game. Um, so yeah, I mean I feel like they've been pushing the action direction for a while now, and maybe or the option for turn based. I think it would be. I think it's more welcome now because there are a lot of big turn-based games even now that sell well. Um, so that would be the direction I'd want.
Okay. Before I ask you this next question, I want to say a pipe dream of mine was going crazy bonkers with the next Final Fantasy and designing it in a way that there were like three main modes through the story, like a turn-based version where all the enemies and bosses were balanced around turn-based, and then a version where it's like action-based where the fights have like real-time mechanics, like what you saw in 16 and to an extent in Rebirth. It's like, hey, you can have it this way too. I mean, that's an immense amount of development time and resources. So like this would be like one of the highest budget games ever made. But I mean, I guess that's the thing is that with these rising budgets, I mean, these pipe dream things are a little insane. So they maybe have to like really focus on what they want. And even if they're going to keep going in a direction with, these big 3D pushing the limits of the hardware games, I am surprised that they don't try and like other than like updating older games in the series, they don't really go to new original like old school style Final Fantasy. It was a topic we had on a episode of Solo Q a little while ago about Zelda, like Aonuma's statement about, oh, we're just gonna like focus on open air Zeldas going forward. And it's like, why won't you have another team develop like classic Zeldas as well? Especially how like sometimes we don't know the inner working. So like what seems like what the hell are you doing is like we don't maybe have the information they do. So I like there could be a real reason for that, but it seems like weird that they wouldn't take advantage of the brand. If you're trying to grow the brand, put out different types of games out on there, and obviously there are tons of spinoffs that happen. But I think what we don't get is a set schedule of like, here's a classic style turn-based Final Fantasy that's going to come out every 2 to 3 years. And then here's your big 3D ones that come out every like 3, 4, 5 years or something like that. And we don't really like see that. And seems like something a lot of us would want, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of Zelda, I would love that. I think about Assassin's Creed now, where they just put out Mirage, marketed as old school, the way Assassin's Creed was at the very beginning, and then upcoming we have Assassin's Creed Red, which is like the RPG huge game. And I feel like that's what they're gonna do from now on with Assassin's Creed is kind of have the traditional one and something more ambitious. Zelda, obviously. I think they should have 2D Zelda games that focus more on dungeons.
Yep.
They could put a team together and it would make enough money. And with Zelda and with Final Fantasy, I feel like they could do the same. But to your point of like the battle system, like I feel like Rebirth's battle system does strike a good balance because it does have a lot of the button mashy action elements, but then you can jump in the menu and select commands and things like that.
Yes, I mean, I actually love what they did in this.
Yeah.
Even, I mean, yes, remake foundation is pretty good. They've brought in the synergy from intermission, and they kind of expanded upon it, and it really in a more party dynamic where you have 3 party members at any time. They really kind of nudge you like, hey, even more like switch between your party members, or at least issue commands to them to build up synergy meter so you can unleash these synergy attacks. And then also like the defensive synergy things. I mean, they're not really defensive, but you activate them out of block, like launchers, defensive stances, like counters. So it's like, I really didn't use it a lot in my first playthrough, but like on my like hard and subsequent playthrough, I'm really using it. For example, Tifa, one of the synergies with Tifa, her R1, not like a synergy bar attack, is like, yeah, they'll launch her up. That's how you launch her into the air. Everyone's like, I wish Tifa had something to launch her in air. It's like, she does. You just have that R1, and then one of your teammates at any point will launch her up. It's always there, I think. And it's like, oh, well, crap, that's awesome. So anyway, the point is, this, I keep hoping they evolve it, especially in part 3, that they what crazy ideas they have for that. But this has been a really great hybrid system. I feel like you're definitely on point with that, and I'm really enjoying it. And I mean, I don't know what else I'd really want other than, my main issues are with, like, materia stuff, and still not having a loadout system. Like, they still don't let you save preset. Like, you can save party member presets, but not gear materia presets. And like I wish they'd do something with that. But anyway, I do like this, and it would be great to see 17 maybe take this. I guess my question beyond just like the battle system is, let's start with, like, if they're not going to go in a more 2D or legacy style Final Fantasy, which doesn't seem like the case with 17. What can they do if they are going to do like a more like 3D open environment, type Final Fantasy? Should it even be large open environment? So we have Rebirth's format, we have 16's format. I mean, we also have other contemporaries. I mean, series that have blown up. Like, so, but let's start here. Does it need to go like full open world? Because like we're seeing, like Zelda benefited from open world. Like Elden Ring, like everyone's like, oh, Elden Ring's like, big open world RPG. That does fantastic. The Witcher 3. It's like we have so many examples of these big giant environments. Do you think that's something they maybe need to do? They did in 15, but there were other issues with 15. Do you think they maybe need to go back to that?
No, I mean, I don't think every game needs to be open world. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is like open environment where it's like it's definitely not open world at all. Because you are segmented into different regions. Um, and the environments are big and there are things to do in them, but like I feel like that size is perfect for me. In many ways I found Tears of the Kingdom very overwhelming.
Okay.
Because it's just so big. Um, where I found it more anxiety ridden than fun at times. Um, so I kind of like how they're doing it in Rebirth, where the environments are big. What's more important to me is like there's varied environments to go to.
Yes.
Give me towns that feel alive, that have stuff to do. Like I love the Rebirth towns, and areas, and let me listen to some conversations and do mini games and things like that. So like in and of itself, like the size of the world, like that's not impressive to me.
Well,
It's what's in it.
okay.
Um,
Real quick about what's in it. So let
yeah,
me be more specific here, because I do agree. Like, just having open world that's like boring or big,
yeah.
or and daunting. So I guess the like going more specifically to like something like Elden Ring, and even like Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild, the sense of exploration and freedom to do what you want, which is not there is exploration in Rebirth. But let's be honest, it is a very story driven game. You have to go to regions in order. But that's 7. This is the 7 remake trilogy. For 17, where all bets are off, is that something maybe you would like to see, where there is a more freedom in how you explore and progress through the game? Because even 15 didn't really do that either. It was still very story driven. Do you think there's a way to do that, but also maintain the level of storytelling that's known in Final Fantasy, the more direct style of storytelling? Or do you think maybe they should change the way they do their storytelling in Final Fantasy?
I mean, there might be a way to do that, but with story heavy games, it's very you want to connect the dots. So it's like you've done this, you go here and you do that. Um, I could kind of see like certain spots in the story where it's like, okay, we can't do whatever the big thing is yet, so now we can do all this other stuff. That could work. Would I? Is it a requirement for me for it to be completely open, do whatever you want at any time? Um, Not for me. Like I do like having direction at times. So, I think especially for like side content, it would work like with hunts and things like that, where it's like, okay, you can do the hunts in any order you want. You can fight a level 99 and right away. I think that'd be fun. Um, in terms of story, I kind of do like having a central story that guides you through the experience and like guides you through all the locations. That's just my personal preference. If they wanted to do the open, do whatever you want whenever you want, I'd be curious to see like how they work that with the story.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that's the difficulty because
Yeah.
one of my criticisms of both Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom is how they do storytelling in that game. I think it does they still haven't figured out how to do it properly. But obviously people have like Rockstar has figured it out with like Red Dead and GTA. Like you have these big open things and there are critical points you have to hit in these giant environments. Whereas like something like Elden Ring, it's a different FromSoft does a completely different type of storytelling. It's all like environmental, it's all like contextual. It's not
Yeah.
in your face outside of like the opening and ending like cutscenes. It's like here you go. Um so like I guess it's just like what you value, but also like Final Fantasy isn't known for a lot of that stuff. And another thing I'll bring up now, the other question is like we had another huge RPG hit, a CRPG last year with Baldur's Gate 3, and would Final Fantasy ever consider going more in that direction, like a very choice based, like custom character driven experience where it is very story heavy, but it's all about your choices you make? Do you think Final Fantasy could ever embrace that for like a future entry and go more in that direction?
I I don't know if they would ever do it to the degree that Larian did, where it's like you can like kill like a lot of characters, like maybe party members. I don't think they would go that route, and then kind of map out the whole story with your decisions. I think that's kind of a step too far for Square, to be honest, and probably most Japanese developers. I just don't think they would go the Larian route.
Yeah. I mean there's maybe like a, a balancing act to be had there, but that would be like a very radical departure. I do
Yeah.
feel like where that was already in like in Larian's wheelhouse with like Baldur's Gate, and as you said, like which teams even at Square Enix would really be capable and equipped to handle a game of that degree. Like the only one I'd maybe like want to see try something like that would be like Yoko Taro and a project like that possibly, just to see how crazy that gets, which is also another good thing to point out real quick. I just forgot, but like obviously we were getting rumors of like maybe like the next Nier installment and being announced possibly. That is a very action driven game that like the last installment sold very well. And obviously they've been milking it to death with all these crossovers rather than giving us like a new entry. So is there anything like you saw like in Nier, or is it, do you think anything from that could be applied to Final Fantasy? Because there've been collaborations, like 14 did collaboration with them. Like Yoko Taro even said like he'd be like the death of Final Fantasy if they made him like the director of one. But like, is that possible? Like, having Yoko Taro involved in like the next like Final Fantasy possibly, and getting all crazy like that?
Um, he could, like, the more successes you have within many Japanese companies, the higher up you go and the more, influence you have. And that's kind of where, Asano is right now, where he has a lot of influence within Square Enix. Um, if he were involved, I definitely think it would stay more action based. Nier, when I think about Nier, I just think about just crazy story twists and some really dark stuff. Um, I would love. I mean, I would love to see that in Final Fantasy. His kind of take on it. As a developer, if he got Final Fantasy 17 and he was a developer, that would break the internet.
I mean, it would. And imagine
Yeah,
like Okabe being like announced as like the composer for it too. I mean, there's so many good
yeah,
composers there, but letting them step up to do like a Final Fantasy soundtrack would be, pretty insane. And yeah,
yeah.
from a narrative perspective, while maybe the level of choice that we see in like a CRPG might not really be possible, this might be like the best thing, next best thing, where it's like you are going to get crazy twists, you're going to get crazy developments, and there will be a degree of choice at some point where maybe there are multiple endings, or you get more out of the story depending on like certain quests you do, and that's just like in whatever, maybe someone does, you can't kill off people, maybe it gets that
Yeah.
wild, who knows.
I think that would be one step too far, and then Final Fantasy VII Rebirth does have some choice where, different dialogue options you make can affect later scenes and things like that. And how you do in side quests affects dialogue and things like that. Um, but in terms of like choice of, okay, you're going to be sent to a completely different environment that if you didn't pick this one thing, you wouldn't see it all.
Yeah.
Um, I,
Yeah.
I don't know if they would do that in relation to how much development time it would take for how few people would see it or something like that, where it's like, okay, if you make this dialogue option, you're the path of the story, like kind of like, well, it's actually a little different because Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance now has like three different paths, or like it has two different paths. Um, and you pick them at the start of the game, but you start very similarly. It's kind of like Fire Emblem, but then it just radically changes. What if it's something like that, where it's like there's up front you're given two choices, um, and then it's just completely different. Would they ever do something like that kind of choice?
Yeah. And to be fair, we do see, you've seen some of it. I won't be very specific here, but there's clearly some kind of like personal choice system, bond system going on in Rebirth that you've been
Yeah.
like noticing with those like smiley faces. And like, obviously, that's been a thing that's been like, developing. Obviously, most people go to like Persona when they think of like social links and stuff like that. So, I mean, is that something, like, yeah, I guess like how are you is that really been like too in your face? Has it been just enough? And like, I know you haven't seen how it plays out, but is that something you think could be an element that returns, not just in like in part three, but like in future Final Fantasies, maybe character relationship building? That's how they could go and maybe impact certain scenes like that. Do you think that's good enough?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see that again. I think it works really quite well, actually. Where it's like you really think about the dialogue choices you're making to like deepen the relationship. In the example of Rebirth, I do think they can take it farther, where it's like, okay, if you've maxed out, kind of like Fire Emblem, if you've maxed out your relationship, you get a special scene, you get a special weapon, you get maybe a unique side quest, something like that. I would like that. Is that a radical departure? I don't think it's radical. I just think it's something fun that other RPGs are doing.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think they could build upon it, as you said.
Yeah.
Like, there's a way to like take it a bit further and not go too extreme. And he just reminded me of another thing because they changed it in Rebirth. You've already seen it. The like in older Final Fantasies, there were optional characters. Seven had Yuffie be an optional character. She
Yeah.
is part of the story now, so she is no longer optional. Is that something maybe you'd like to see? Is like character recruitment come back in Final Fantasy, and that's something like you could completely miss a character altogether in like 17 if you maybe don't do a certain side quest.
Yeah, I would absolutely love to see that back. That does feel kind of missing in Rebirth, where it's like you get all your core characters relatively quickly, and then that's it. Um, and while each character is unique and lends itself to like team customization, um, you know, finding a hidden character that you didn't know about is really cool in RPGs that do it. Um, obviously that's not going to happen in Rebirth in the next seven, because we know who all the characters are going to be. But
Mhm.
in 17, I would like hidden characters that even maybe Square doesn't mention them at all, doesn't show them at all during the marketing, completely hidden.
I think that would be cool too. Have hidden
Yeah,
characters. I even think if they show them all in the marketing, it's like everyone's going to probably assume, oh, we get them all. But like, it'd be a shocker to play through the game. Like, where's that character from that trailer? I never got like that. Would be cool too. It's like, wait a second, everyone wasn't just part of the story. Wait, how? Like, get that dialogue going with other players. Like, hey, wait, how did I? How do you get that character? Even like something to that extent, because I mean, obviously, so many series I've done it. For like me, I think the first time I experienced it was like Fire Emblem. I was like, oh wait, I could have recruited this character. I was like, whoa, that's a big deal. And obviously, like Suikoden, I think is like another big one where it was like, wait, what? I mean, uh, was it like Chrono Cross? Another one, right? I think, or what was what's the
well,
like
there's
other
Chrono
big one?
Trigger, where
Oh yeah,
Chrono
Chrono Trigger
Trigger,
too. Yeah,
yeah, you don't even have to recruit Magus. You can go the whole game without him, basically. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think adding that element of surprise and kind of player customization is important.
yeah. I definitely agree. One thing I want to talk about as well. I know we're going like in a little random order here. I apologize, but before I forget, is you've played a decent amount of Rebirth. You've done some of the boss fights. You've played through Remake. You remember the boss fights for that. I thought some of them, are pretty like good and like, that it works within the system. But one thing we were talking about 16 a little bit, and I want to bring up 16 again because one of the things I would like to see them attempt in 17 is the massive scale, the complete spectacle of some of the boss fights in 16. Specifically for me, it was Titan Lost, and Bahamut. It was just like those two fights were just like, I mean, a lot of the fights are like insane, but those two specifically is like, what in the heck are we? It was like Asura's Wrath. Like it was like we're gonna one up Asura's Wrath here with insanity. I'm like, wait, what? Like Asura's Wrath and Bayonetta, I think of insane, crazy, over the top boss fights. It's like this was like, nah, hold my beer. I was like, okay, like, and I get it. Like even if it doesn't have to be real time action, I just want to see something on that like level again, because it was like the combination. Obviously, the music is on point in Rebirth. So it's not just even the music; it's just like the insane shit you're doing and like seeing, even like just like the cutscene stuff. I would like to see that come back in 17 in some degree. I don't know if like that really matters to you as much as whether it's like you just want a good boss fight, that's more like strategy driven, or did you even like, from what you can remember, do you even like appreciate that like scale and spectacle of 16's boss fights, or does that not really matter to you?
I would love to see it. Does it matter to me all that much? Not particularly. And you're right, like, there's some really cool boss fights in Rebirth. They aren't like huge spectacles, where crazy stuff is happening in the cutscenes in between action sequences. Um, but I think it would be cool to have like, and they do this a little bit in Rebirth, but like maybe mid fight, things change. Either the environment changes, or the boss undergoes a transformation, or something. They do sometimes have new moves, and they go into like rage modes and things like that. But like have that like next level. It's something Elden Ring does. Where it's like, okay, you thought you knew the boss fight, now it's about to get insane. That I think is missing a little bit from Rebirth, where it's like, once you understand how the enemy works, you just attack until they're dead, and that's pretty much it. Um, yeah, there's not a lot of spectacle. There's not a lot of transformation within the boss fights, at least in my opinion.
Yeah.
So that's kind of more important to me.
Yeah. You already shared like a little bit of your philosophy on like what you prefer with combat. So we know 16 already did like very like real time combat,
Yeah.
going approaching character action level. But the last thing I want to ask about like second to last thing. The other things maybe not content wise, but the last content question I want to ask you related to 16 and how it might impact 17 or future Final Fantasy is the tone. Now, Rebirth, for as best as it can, tries to preserve some of the goofiness of like the older original Final Fantasy VII and older style Final Fantasy games, where 16 definitely goes for a more serious, darker tone. Is that something you have any thoughts on in terms of like what direction you'd like to see the next mainline Final Fantasy game go in terms of like attitude, atmosphere, tone? Would you like something to be more lighthearted with goofy moments? Do you like that more serious take that 16 did, or that more serious games do? Which do you kind of prefer?
I feel like there's a balance in Rebirth that I really like, where there's very very serious moments, kind of counterbalanced by very lighthearted stuff and mini games. And that's something that 16 really didn't have a lot of, was mini games. So it's like, okay, you just had this very serious moment. Now let me just do some chocobo racing. I definitely want that. We haven't really touched on it, but I think the amount and diversity of mini games in Rebirth is incredible. And it really helps kind of break up the gameplay and the story and the serious moments. Where I definitely want that back. Where it's okay for the story to be very very serious, but I think it's also okay for lighthearted humor and things like that. And like just fun Easter eggs in the environment.
Yeah.
That maybe not might not be there in like a very serious game, where it's like all of a sudden, oh, there's a chocobo plushie somewhere. That you see. Um, so I would personally like a balance.
Okay, yeah. Like I appreciate, like I enjoyed 16 story a lot, but also I'm coming from someone who plays like 14 and is used to that type of storytelling. It kind of like fit the same mold, and I do think there's a place for that, and I see where they're going for. But playing through Rebirth, it's like it has its serious moments. I mean, you're in Cosmos, so you already played through the Barrett personal story stuff in
Yeah.
the desert area. I don't want to get too specific. Like that whole sequence is like it's a good example of like it gets heavy, it goes hard, it gets dark. And but then you said they have these moments of brevity. You
Yeah.
have these lighthearted moments that are just great, and sandwiched with mini games and side activities. They give you a chance to like breathe and process what you just went through. Whereas I do think like 16 is like it's either escalating action, intensity, hard hitting story, and then there's a lot of like downtime where it's like you're just traveling or doing side quests that are just kind of like traditional style side quests. Go here, get this, interact with these NPCs. I mean, I do think some of them had some pretty good stories, but they're all very heavy hitting stories. There's like very little moments of like brevity and lightheartedness in 16. And so, yeah, I Rebirth maybe appreciate that there is a way to balance both and do a little bit. And I will, in defense of this, there was a certain writer not involved with 16 who's a part of the 14 team, Ishikawa. She is probably better known for writing some of like the better stuff in 14 lately. She wrote Shadowbringers and Walker, and there's a lot of rumors about what she might be doing next because she's not writing Dawn Trail. She's not doing the next 14 expansion. So there's some rumors about what she might be doing. But before we get into that, the last thing I want to talk about, because you mentioned minigames, and I did want to get into that with 7, like what Rebirth has done with, okay, so it's not open world. It is these giant open environments. It has the usual like Ubisoft style like activities, the towers mixed in with these minigame activities. Do you think that was too much? Or do you think like it was just the right amount that you've experienced so far? And do you think it works because it's Final Fantasy VII and we have these expectations from the original, or do you think all this could work in a Final Fantasy 17?
Yeah, so I mean, I think in terms of the mini games, the diversity of them, the goals of them is perfect. All very, very interesting. In terms of like the region specific stuff, go to the tower, do the enemies, like that is starting to wear on me a bit now that I'm like 5 regions in, and like all those quests are exactly the same. Um, there's really not a lot of diversity there, but you are seeing new enemies, you are learning about the world and things like that. But I think there's an opportunity um to kind of have more diverse objectives in each area you go to, or just different things. And I guess the environments in Rebirth have a gimmick where it's like the chocobo you have, one can fly and one can run up walls. I don't necessarily need all of that. I understand why they
Okay.
did it, um, but it does make finding everything feel like a chore sometimes because the map isn't the most detailed. So often you can kind of, oh, how do I get this? And then it's, oh, I didn't see this ramp in the corner here to get up. So there are things like that I'm not super fond of. Um, but yeah, I mean, I some people might call like all the regional objectives busy work. For me, as someone who likes JRPGs and leveling up and doing that one more thing and getting the experience, I think that's very important. Is you get experience for doing all the mini game, all the side quests, and some side quests give you like experience for your character to increase skills. So I think any side quest, any mini game, anything you do needs to have a tangible reward.
I think that's very integral, is having a
Yeah.
meaningful reward that just like keeps feeding into
Yeah.
like the loop to encourage you. No, I do
Because
agree. Like, oh, go ahead. Did you have something?
yeah, because if I wasn't getting party experience for everything, would I necessarily want to do it all again and again and again? Maybe not.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I guess I was gonna agree with you that the some of the more like traditional like Ubisoft esque activities by the like last few regions, like, all right, I mean, it's like fun. Like I get why they're there, but I almost think there's maybe a little bit too much because of how long this game is. That I think going forward, at least for part 3, they could trim some of it down and focus on like I guess the variety. For example, like the proto relic side activities are all unique in each region. So
Yeah.
like if you're gonna do something that's repetitive, at least give it a unique take in each region. So like if you're gonna do a tower, it's like, okay, the first region is you gotta fight some enemies at the base. Maybe the next one is like a platforming thing, because we had those traversal mechanics that were like only in certain parts of the game. Maybe part 3 could be like, hey, the towers in region 2 are gonna have you use the grappling hook and you gotta figure out a path to get up to the top. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, you can make it, do some variety, or even like the different types of chocobo. That's going to be one of the ways you do something in there. And I did appreciate that. And that's one of the things I'd like to see more of in part 3 is bring back those character specific actions and integrating them more in like the open environments, not just like restricting them this chapter. You're going to have this one for this little part here, and then you're going to lose it and it's not coming back. It's like, okay, Barrett's just going to shoot some things in a cave and that's it. You're never going to do that again. It's like, okay, can we have more opportunities to do that? And by exploring, I'd love those to be something that reward me for exploring rather than here's another, rhythm based sort of or memory mini game where I can lower the difficulty of the summon boss. Like that was cool once or twice, but I'm like, I think we can get rid of those. The springs, the like material, the Mako springs, like
Moogle.
you could probably replace those with something like what we're talking about here, I would hope.
Yeah, and like the Moogles got very repetitive. Um,
The Kingdom Hearts mini game. It's the most Kingdom
yeah,
Hearts ass thing I've ever seen.
yeah, and even in terms of like the field intel for like the enemies, maybe you do like one on one or two characters, or there's some kind of gimmick to it. Just something more, and they do have objectives. Um, but I agree with you. I feel like within each region they could have varied it up a bit more than they did. I do like how, at least the major side quest of each region, the intel stuff is different. Some are more fun than others, some take a lot more time than others. But yeah, I definitely want to see that more.
Yeah. So obviously in part 3 we expect all this stuff. I guess the question is the like kind of like the one of the last content questions I have for you about like 17 is that
Yeah.
yeah, like what type of mini game, this balance, is this obviously something you want to see done in 17, or do you think maybe 17 shouldn't go too overboard with everything like this is working in Rebirth, because maybe it's been such a long time since we've seen a Final Fantasy game do this level? Do you think maybe they need to reel it back a little bit if they're going to do it in the next mainline Final Fantasy they're considering it?
I mean, I don't know if they have to reel it back, but the mini games have to make sense with like the world that they're crafting. Obviously because Golden Saucer is this like Disneyland area, you could have a starship mini game and chocobo racing where, it works. Um, the mini games have to work in whatever setting 17 it is or has, or maybe they're mini games related to like character backgrounds. So like maybe the character, is a chocobo racer or something. And so we do a lot of chocobo racing like that. So I would like it to be, um, I want it to fit the world of 17 and the characters.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I agree. I don't think they need to like tone it down at all. I think as long as they're fun and they contextually make sense. Like,
Yeah.
well, obviously 7 has the gold saucer, so it's like, okay, you have this big area that's supposed to be a mini game haven. But who's to say they don't make something else in like a
Yeah.
new mainline Final Fantasy? Like, this is your mini game haven that you're going to go to, and there'll be like other versions of that mini game throughout. So I think this is a critical point actually, that they have a healthy amount of minigame activities in the next mainline Final Fantasy, because we've seen like it just goes over so well, and it's something that has like a long-standing history with like Final Fantasy in the old school era of RPGs, and to bring it back to this degree, it's like they kind of like raised the bar here. It's like other than this, it's like to me, even though I don't play these games, I know them for this Yakuza series, like in their crazy mini games. It's like you got Yakuza, and you have like now Final Fantasy VII Rebirth has been like, yo, here we go. We're bringing them back too. They're in style. So I really think they, not just in part 3, but in 17, people are going to be looking to them like, even if it's like the 16 team making the next game against CBU3, it's like, sorry guys, you got to put mini games in there, despite whatever excuses you have. You got to put them in this time. I feel like.
Yeah, because side quests, while technically different, you're doing a lot of the same stuff. You're going here, you're doing that, you're fighting. Mini games give you a chance to do something completely different. In Rebirth, you're racing. There's Star Race. There's a card game.
Yeah, Queen's
Um,
Blood. Heck yeah.
there's strategy games. There's all different sorts of stuff to do that's completely different than what you're doing in the main game. And that's something that really good side quests can't necessarily overcome all the time. So I feel like it's really important to have mini games to like balance out like the main story and the side content, which can technically feel very samey because the genre is the same. It's the same kind of thing. So yeah, I definitely want a lot of mini games.
Yeah, definitely did too. Now we talked a lot about like existing games and like what could be taken from them to be put into the future of Final Fantasy, like in the Final Fantasy 17. It's now time to talk about what we think Final Fantasy 17 will actually be, and what you hope it will be. And I want to start with, who do you think should be making it? Like, like who do you think will make it, and who do you want to make it? I guess those are the two big questions. Let's go there.
Oh boy, I mean, you probably know what I'm gonna say. Who do I want to make it is Team Asano. And whatever development studio they partner with, because they don't always make their own games internally. They usually partner with their own studio. But I'd want Team Asano's sensibilities in terms of, okay, there's some really dark stuff, and there's some very fun, lighthearted moments. He's their team's a master of like turn-based combat, in my opinion. Like some of the most fun, addictive turn-based systems. It would be a classic Final Fantasy with like jobs and things like that. That's what I would want. Is it going to happen? Probably not. I don't know. Like, would they go with like the 14 team again? Um, you know, did Final Fantasy 16 do so well that they'd want the same team to have an encore at it? I'm not sure. Um, personally, I love the Dragon Quest games. I think Dragon Quest 11 is fantastic. It's you know, I would love to see a Final Fantasy game like that. But yeah, I'm not sure because Square Enix is undergoing some changes now, so we don't exactly know how the teams are going to look, or how the teams look now and how they're going to look in the future. Um, yeah, I'm not, I don't, I, I don't really have a preference for team, but like once I see it, like I'll know if I'll like it.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a good answer. It's like we
Yeah.
don't like it. There are several different possibilities that could play out. I'm looking in like chat and like I've seen people shout some of the things that like we're thinking of. Like we already talked about like Yoko Taro and where they held that, but like there's also like if near the next near project is something he's going to be working on, will he have the time and resources to really work on the next mainline Final Fantasy? Will that work with the timetable here? We also don't know the timetable for this. We had 16 just come out last year. We still need part 3 for the remake trilogy to come out. So you have some resources that are already allocated to that. So who knows when they're expecting 17 to be a reality? But it's again like just going by who is um by going by who is actually booked now. Yoko Taro might already be booked on a project, possibly. As you said, I saw Hamaguchi throw it out there, but they have to make part 3 for the remake. That
Yeah.
that is the first priority, and they're already like him and Katase. They're already talking about what they're going to need to do for part 3. So it's like clearly they are well underway, gearing up to get that out. And I honestly don't think it'll take more than I think 2027 is the absolute latest part 3 comes out. That would be the 30th anniversary of Final Fantasy VII, so it'd be a great time. I think 2.5 years to 3 years is going to be like the realistic time expectation for that. So shorter wait than it was for part 2, in my opinion. So, but that team is going to be busy working on that for at least the next 2 years, realistically. And so they probably can't be on that, which does, like you said, like so creative business unit 3. Like Team Asano obviously could possibly have an opening for that because their projects don't maybe take as long. But the people are pointing to CBE3 because 2 reasons I would say they could be likely. One, they did do 16 and it's like, well, maybe like they can build upon that. Obviously, it wasn't perfect. There are some lessons to be learned there. could they get another shot? Because the second entry could prove to be radically better and different and go into like a much better direction. So I mean, they are responsible for a lot of different projects. Obviously, 14 is getting a new expansion this year. They're always constantly developing. But I mentioned Ishikawa earlier. She has been writing the last two expansions. There's a lot. I've seen a lot of fans who are asking like maybe she should be considered to helm the 17 project, and because the reason I get to this, sorry to make the point here, Naoki Yoshida is kind of like a troll prophet in that he says stuff as like it could be this, and then like he's actually telling you what they are doing behind the scenes, but he phrases it as a what if, and people have started to pick up that wait, he said that and that's exactly what happened. Wait, listen to what he's saying. And he said the most recent thing he said about the future of Final Fantasy is that maybe we should turn it over to younger team members and give them a chance, or team members who haven't had a chance to be in a position of power on these bigger projects. And so there is some belief now that 17 might be helmed by a younger team, a team that's willing to take more risk, to try more radical ideas. And what would that be comprised of? And I think Ishikawa fits the billing for that. Even if she's not going to be the director, I hope she gets the chance to maybe write that story, because she has demonstrated she can, like, her skill level of writing and her command of like different, like wide ranging, like tones and feelings. Like we were saying, we want to see lighthearted moments mixed with these things. She clearly is a master of that. If you've played Shadowbringers and Endwalker, heavy hitting shit, goofy ass shit, like she does it all, and it comes off so fantastic. So on a personal level, to answer the personal question, I really hope she is involved in some capacity. That's like my biggest ask, is having her involved, if not at least for the story. But I'm with you too. It's like I'm open to a lot of different teams that could maybe like develop this. Like I think I'm with you. Like, I just need to see what they're doing. But like personally, I hope it borrows as much as it can from like what Rebirth is doing structurally. Because if you're gonna do a story-driven plot, you need to have these big open environments that are fun to explore, to have these variety of activities. And it just feels like it easily can become a 100+ hour game. Or if you just want to play the story, it's only like a 35 hour game, but it's still rewarding and satisfying. That is like what I would really like to have, along with, that storytelling that's both serious, goofy, and strikes that perfect balance.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I really like what Rebirth is doing. You have a full party of characters, with all unique skills, fun, deep combat system, interesting environments, a lot of stuff to do. And I think it's a good template for what's possible now, because we think back all the way to Final Fantasy XIII and the struggle that Square had with towns and things like that. And now I'm playing Rebirth, and it's like these are some of the most amazing, RPG towns I think I've ever experienced. And just in terms of atmosphere and music and what the NPCs are saying and what you can do. So I feel like that they have it now. Like they have it, like they've done it. Where it's like they've proven, okay, you can make a big RPG with a lot of varied towns with a big cast. Now just make all the characters different and all the environments different, and you have it. So I feel like they just need to build on what they built with Rebirth.
Mm-hmm. I will also say I really hope that either Katase or Yoshida serves as like the producer. They have now both proven they are very good at keeping projects on track, getting them out, and and their quality products one way or another. So at the very least, I do hope one of the two of them. If there's someone else at Square Enix I'm just not aware of that's like proven as a good like producer, possibly not just like a director. I mean, sure, but like I basically want a producer who's like going to get this out in like roughly like 3 years, unless it's super ambitious, in which you better convey that early, like we're going for something you've never seen before, and you better illustrate that in your trailers, like so that we believe it. Otherwise, when they announce 17, it better be out within 3 years max of that first announcement. Like I know Square Enix, you're trying to get things out faster, but sometimes they take longer. 3 years, within 3 years, or it's like don't fall back into that trap of wait, you announced it, where is it? Like what, even like remake 5 years from announcement to release. It's like, come on, can't do that
Yeah.
again.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want the director to change after 2 years. I don't want the team to change after 2 years. Rumblings that they threw out, half the game to start over. I don't want development hell. And it sounds like, at least with you know 7 Part 3, that's not going to be a problem. They have
Hmm.
everything set up, but it seems to always be an issue with numbered Final Fantasy games most of the time, where it's like, what's going on? Um, it would be refreshing if 17 and 16 actually too. I can't remember if we heard about any development troubles with 16.
The only thing
Um,
they said was the outside developers were holding up some things. So like they're
yeah,
like, it's not our team, it's not Square Enix, but some of our
yeah,
contractors aren't finishing on time. But they were very transparent. I mean, that's kind of Naoki Yoshida's MO, is being very transparent.
yeah.
And from announcement to release was like 3.5 years, I think.
So
So a
that's
little
fine.
more than 3 years, but still not bad for a mainline numbered Final Fantasy in the
Yeah.
modern age, honestly.
I mean, fans just get pissed off when you announce a game and you don't hear about it in 2 years, and you're wondering what's going on. So yeah, communication is important. Um, and yeah, like, hopefully now, like, their development structures are geared up to not have major issues, or at least don't announce the game until it's in a state where, like, the major issues are behind it. Um, I think about, Visions of Mana. We heard rumblings that a new Mana game was being made, but they didn't announce it. I mean, they didn't officially announce it. They didn't really talk about it. And now they announced it when it was pretty much done. And that's kind of the way I like it, where it's like, okay, maybe development isn't completely finished, but announce it when you can see the finish line.
Hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree, and they've stated they want to do that. It's just whether they
Yeah.
practice what they preach is a whole different thing. Yeah, real quick, do you think they might, because they did it for 16? I don't know if they did it for Rebirth, but like Square Enix obviously like recruited new talent for some of these games. I mean, we saw some people from Capcom coming over. Obviously the battle director for 16. It's like, do you think maybe they would consider that kind of like course for 17, trying to like recruit somebody from another company to come over, or if there's a freelancer currently available that might not be associated with the company that they might want to bring over for a project, possibly?
I don't know if you're thinking about who I'm thinking of. But they brought them in because Square didn't have a lot of internal experience with action games,
Yeah.
so it made sense. If they're doing something, if, like, I don't know, Final Fantasy 17 is like, I wouldn't even know what the genre, a first person shooter. Then yeah, they would bring someone in. But I don't know. I'd want them to kind of tap the talent they have internally.
Yeah, I agree.
As much
Yes,
talent.
I
I don't
did.
know. I don't
I
know.
Yeah, I was getting to like so Huber and I, Michael Huber and I joke about the people who are no longer associated with the company, recent retiree or departures from certain companies. Like we were saying, like they should get together. So like we're like, oh man, we like get like Kamiya, get like get some of them, and even like team them up with like Harada, like have them leave too, and call them the bad boys of gaming development. Like, some crazy thing where they just make a wild ass game that makes no sense. Like, wait, what are you making? But yeah, that's something else. I do think they should stick within their wheelhouse of talent, obviously, because they have so much talent there and they need to grow. And as you said, it was like a specialized reason to bring in. You mentioned the first person thing real quick before I forget. There was a friend who told me a rumor. I think it was reported on that at one point they were considering like a looter shooter for a Final Fantasy game where it was going to be like, but like medieval style. And it's like there was color coded weapon drops. I was like, oh God, like,
Yeah,
no, no, no. Like that was like chasing the games as a service thing. I was like, no, 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 no. Don't make Final Fantasy a game as a service, please, for a main line. That's the one direction do not go in. You have 14. You're gonna make another MMO, sure, but don't try and chase the trend like you're doing with other stuff. Like it's not gonna work out whatsoever.
yeah, we saw
Oof.
that with, what was it, like, Babylon's Fall, where
Babylon's Fall. Hmm.
they tried it, flamed out after a couple months.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm of the opinion, just stick with the talent you have. You have a lot of it, even though we don't exactly know what everyone's working on. Like, we didn't even talk about Kingdom Hearts 4. There's a big team working on Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah, I didn't bring up Kingdom Hearts 4 because I think that's like now that Rebirth is out, I think that is and Dawn Trail will be out this year. That is the next major project that has like a due date. I think it's next year. I
No.
really think it's next year. I think it's coming out next year, and we're going to see that marketing machine ramp up like later this year for that. And then, but that team will possibly be free to. I do think that team is going to be locked into Kingdom Hearts, though. I
Yeah.
think they want to push that franchise now harder than ever. I think they see the potential of it. I don't think that team is going to be brought over. They have contributed. They did assist on. They have assisted on. They assisted on 16. They have contributed, but I don't think they would be in charge of the development of a new mainline Final Fantasy. Just as I expect, the recently refolded into Square Enix proper, the remnants of Luminous to probably be like attached to like a mainline Final Fantasy game with like their experience in open world development, like with Forspoken. It's like I do think they will probably be a good fit, and obviously 15 before that to help contribute to the next mainline Final Fantasy. But I don't think obviously they're not going to be in charge because they no longer exist as an independent studio anymore. So I do think that. The last thing I want to talk about before we wrap up here is we talk about like who we want to work on it, content ideas. I guess like conceptually what it should be, and to kind of like jog your ideas here if you don't have any. It's like should 17 be a brand new original entry? Should it be a continuation of an existing game, or like a new game set within the universe of an existing entry? Like where do you think they should go conceptually with the next mainline Final Fantasy?
I thought it was interesting with Final Fantasy XII how it took place in like the universe of Final Fantasy Tactics. So I don't think that's a terrible idea. What if it's in like the same area but like 1,000 years in the future or something like that? I think that'd be cool. Either way is fine. If it's a completely new universe, which is what mainline Final Fantasy games do, but I do think it would actually be hype, and bring excitement if it's like, okay, this game takes place in, I don't know, Spira. If Final Fantasy X, everything that happened. Now it's like 1,000 years in the future, or something like that.
Another
Um,
1,000 years in the future, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be excited for that, and then you could bring back some of those battle elements, um, and characters and races and things like that. So I think either way, I'd be down for.
Yeah. You mentioned Final Fantasy X, which is like the
Yeah,
magic word for me. The make the internet lose their shit, moment is taking probably the two biggest fan bases of Final Fantasy X and 7. If they were to like show this trailer where it like clearly looks like it's 7 or 10-esque, it's like, wow, this like I think this is in Spirit, or I think this is in the world of Final Fantasy 7. And like the whole trailer for 17, like you think you're seeing this new trailer, and it's like even if it's like set in the future, so it's like not even the same characters from the game, and like so it's like the 7 world, like you see like the ruins of Midgar, like that, like Red 13, sorry, for OG spoilers, Red 13 when he's older, seeing the ruins of Midgar, and it's like, oh, like this is okay, so we're going like into the distant future of like Final Fantasy 7, and then you like see a Blitzball wash up on the like a wave, you're like, wait, what? And so
yeah,
you like see like the 7 logo, it's like Final Fantasy 7 like it's 7-2, and like an X just goes in front of it, it's like 17. It's like,
yeah,
wow, they're fusing 10 and 7 together,
yeah.
what the hell? Because of the
Or,
Shinra like thing. It's like, oh no, they're doing it, they're making it real.
yeah, I mean, or if it's like 9, and then all you're hearing is the music, and then you just see like the mini VVs, and it's like, okay, we're back in this world now.
Yeah.
Or yeah, that would be extremely cool if done a certain way. Obviously, like when they do completely new universes, it's very exciting, but you're not attached. It takes time to like learn about it and get attached to it. But yeah, if you go the nostalgia, it's basically the nostalgia route. Um, it can work, but it could also backfire. If you
Yeah,
make it worse.
very true. Now, like
Yeah.
thematically, do you like? Would you prefer something that's like more like a medieval setting? I saw someone in chat ask for like cyberpunk, like going more like futuristic. Is there like a obviously we talked about 10, which is like this more like tropical paradise, like south, it's like the Southeast Asia, the Pacific theme. It's like, is there something that sticks out that you'd like them to see, or are you just like anything that just could go for you?
And anything could go for me. 16 was more fantasy, and even 7 is more I mean, there are some futuristic elements, but a lot of it is fantasy in the environments, like just Grand Canyon and grass area. It is more fantasy, and even like the towns aren't like huge technological constructions, except for Golden Saucer. Um, but I don't know. I think I would like to see something more technologically advanced. In terms of just like setting and theme. For the next game, I think that'd be cool.
Would you want?
I,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I've always thought about that with Zelda. It's like, what if we took
Oh,
Zelda out of the fantasy for once and moved it into some futuristic thing?
yeah, they keep hitting it with the Sheikah stuff and
Yeah.
Breath of Wild, Tears of the Kingdom. I mean, they and then obviously the Zonai stuff. It's like they are showing tech stuff. I mean, and we also knew about like their original idea for Zelda, being like in the future, and like the computer chip pieces for the Triforce pieces. Like maybe they could revisit that. But for Final Fantasy, what I was about to ask you is like when we talk about future, like you think they ever go to like space, like space travel, like going to different planets, like spaceships, like stuff like that, or you think it's just more like futuristic technology, but still like on like one planet?
So like Star Ocean, kind
Well,
of.
okay, Star Ocean
Yeah.
is like the Ren Fair Star Trek episodes where you have the spaceship and you go down to a planet and it's like not advanced, so it's like where's the sci-fi stuff? Like it always does that. It never like does what I hope. It's never Mass Effect, basically.
I mean, I also think about Rogue Galaxy. Did
Oh
it
yeah.
kind of where you explore different basically touch down to different planets. You do what you have to do, and you have your ship environment. Um, I don't know. I think that could be cool because not too long ago I played Live Alive. And then there is this like ship segment where it's like everyone goes crazy and there's something evil on board. That whole thing, just like that whole space genre, it is interesting in terms of travel. I think about a lot of anime too, where it's like, yeah, what if like the primary environment was a spaceship and you're stuck there and the isolation and all of that. It would be different.
All right. Yeah, I actually wasn't thinking of it combined to a ship. I was like, maybe like your ship's what you travel and like you can customize your
Yeah.
ship. But that's a cool idea. What about like we've seen this in older Final Fantasy games. I don't know the last time we've seen it return, but like the multiple worlds, like an underworld or like like a different like started with like the Dark World, Light World, and Link to the Past concept that's been like iterated on. I mean, technically Final Fantasy did it before that, so would you like to see something like that come back where there's like a radical change in the environment at some point, like even like World of Darkness type level event?
Yeah, I mean, I think has Final Fantasy done that? In terms of like a completely different, like the same world but just
15,
different.
someone chat said, I remember 15
Yeah,
tried, but that wouldn't,
yeah,
that was so not well
yeah.
done. I wouldn't count that.
I guess in terms of like Final Fantasy VI, um, where it's like, yeah, maybe okay, you start in a world and then something cataclysmic happens, and then it's completely different. Or if it's like something like Chrono Cross, where it's like you're transported and like subtle things are different and like things are different. I think that could be cool. Um, why not do something like what Dragon Quest has done, where it's like maybe you start as a kid, like you actually play as the kid, and you play through different phases of his life. Um,
16 did that
and-
too, a little
yeah,
bit, but like you were
yeah,
you were only a kid for a little while. Like I thought it was gonna be
yeah,
much longer, but more significant. I think like that time skip was. I know what you're talking about with Dragon Quest. It's like I think that's a little bit more profound in how they do that, and I think that could be a little bit more impactful. And focusing on like how the world changed, where 16 was a narrative device, it wasn't like a structural game device used, to change how the world looked and stuff like that.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think if like you have a really evil villain who like in the middle of the game destroys everything and then like the world is completely different. I think that'd be cool.
I have like one last thing I can think of because I don't think I've seen it done since. And it has. I apologize. Do you remember a game called Arctilad Twilight of Spirits? there was a mechanic in there where you play as two different parties, basically from two different like sides, and
Oh
you
yeah.
play you keep bouncing between them, and at the end they come to a head and they clash, and the side that you pick to support and win, they advance forward in the story and the other one does not. So would you ever want to see them do something like that where you're like jumping between two different like point of view factions, and then like there might be like that's the decision part. It's like who from this point on are you going to be playing as and who's going to be on the sidelines?
Yeah, I mean that's very interesting. I think about Suikoden 3,
Oh
where you
yeah, yeah.
where you had three different points of view in same events sometimes, and then you come together. It wasn't as radical where it's like you fight the other two and then they're gone. But yeah, I think it would be interesting where it's like, okay, maybe you know you're fighting against an empire, and then you cut, and then you're playing a party from the empire or something like that. Yeah, I would love that. I think that'd be cool. Yeah, it's not something that we've seen in a while.
Yeah, for sure. Now, is there anything we haven't talked about that you would like to like see in 7 or 17 or next mainline Final Fantasy, or just like a thing we haven't talked about yet that you like
Yeah.
really want to talk about before we wrap it up here?
I don't want all the playable characters to be humans.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Um, Final Fantasy 15 did that. Obviously Final Fantasy 16 had limited characters. Um, but now I'm playing Rebirth and it's like, there's Red. Give me a robot character, give me something. I want to go back to the JRPG years where anything could be a party member. I think that'd be cool. Where it's just like the diverse races and things, and I just don't want all human characters.
I agree with you. I think I really hope they embrace that. Because like it's been fun in Rebirth to see that. And obviously so many other games do already do it. And it's kind of like boring. And like so then when you think to 15, it's like, yeah, that was kind of like boring. Even like 16, it's like coming, especially because a lot of people played 16 were 14 fans, and like where are all the different races and stuff like these creatures? Like why aren't they, where are they? Why aren't we playing as them? Oh, okay, never mind. Like that's something you have like already in 14. But yeah, but looking back at the older style, legacy RPGs, especially from Square Enix, so many crazy character designs. I mean, and there's some of the most beloved are like that. Like I think like Chrono Trigger. It's like how many unique characters they had in that. I mean, even like recently we got the re-release of Super Mario RPG, the collaboration of Nintendo and Square Enix, and having the different types of characters be playable. It's like it's just fun to see that, and it opens up so many different possibilities. And like we, unless something radical happens in part three, we know we're not getting another non-human playable character most likely. So that's not something we have to look forward to in part three. So I do think they could use 17 as that opportunity to be like, hey, that's going to be one of our focuses, is that like you don't like majority of the characters aren't going to be human possibly, or we have a good healthy mix of humanoid characters and then these other more unique characters, and you can look forward to that.
Yeah, so I'd say that's like the big thing that we haven't talked about that I would like to see. Just unique party members, and like with all very different, like make them very very different.
hmm Now, do you want the Rebirth Moogle to join your party in the future, or what's your stance on the Rebirth Moogle? I saw that's like a hot topic. Real quick, again, never got your
Like
chance to ask you about that.
I did find it a little alarming the first time you see it, but then it's like then you get used to it. But yeah, they're a little too realistic. They're a little too realistic. Yeah, they are interesting. I don't know if I
Okay.
want to. I don't know if I'd want that Moogle in my party.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that's gonna do it for this episode. Before we sign off here, Stealth, could you let our listeners and viewers know where they could follow you if they want to like check out more of your stuff, or just like if you have anything in the works that you want to talk about, or stuff that you were covering.
Sure. You can follow me on Twitter at Stealth40K. I just wrapped up a big collaboration with Square Enix on a Final Fantasy VII remake integrate plus Rebirth giveaway. I do giveaways throughout the year for various things if the opportunities arise. So Those are always fun. So keep an eye out for more of those.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that, and thanks for joining me to talk about this. It was just really really fun to think about what the future might hold. So I mean, we'll see. I think it's gonna be a little bit of a wait. As we
Yeah.
said, we probably got like we got part three to look forward to and remake. We got like Kingdom Hearts 4 from Square Enix. We got Dragon Quest 12, which as I said before, we're
And
probably not seeing that till we see Switch 2. So
yeah, and we didn't talk about it, but Team Asano will have Bravely
yes,
Default news this year.
that's right.
Um, so that's gonna be so that might, even though it's not named Final Fantasy, and because it's not named Final Fantasy, a lot of people just instinctively don't care about it. In terms of like gameplay systems and things like that, if it's a new game, might be closer to what I'd like to see too.
Well, I hope. I mean, I expect it will be, but I also hope because they've been doing such a good job over there. Like they've been knocking it out of the park with those. So I hope they keep continuing to get developing them. Unfortunately, like not every team has had that that luck. I saw was it Tokyo RPG Factory got was
Yeah.
they were they folded back in or were they shuttered? I forget what the announcement was,
I think
but
what happened to them is very similar to what happened with, who was the studio that did Forspoken?
oh, Luminous, they got
Yeah.
reabsorbed back in, so not independent anymore.
Yeah, I think that's what happened. But one question I didn't ask you actually, for the characters of Final Fantasy 17, would you want them to all be defined, or do you want a
Oh,
customizable job system?
okay, jobs. Yes. Okay, we
Yeah.
didn't talk about this. Yeah, we're not done yet. Sorry. This is a good topic. I can't believe I forgot this. Because I think about this all the time. I thought you were about like looks. I don't want custom character creator, FYI. Like
Yeah, no, no,
since I
no.
brought that up, I want defined character designs. I think Square Enix is so great when they make character designs. They're way better than what I can do. So like make me a defined character. But to your question, I do think they really should try and re-embrace bringing back some kind of like job system and some depth to a job system. Like I wish they could go back to 5 and like go to like that level of depth, or even like Final Fantasy 3, which is literally kind of like the Final Fantasy 14 job system. Like just some kind of way to like change roles for each character. I would like to see that come back, and I think that is one thing that, I mean, 7 is very defined. I understand it probably would not make sense, but I do think that is something I'd really like to see them bring back, is having characters being able to change jobs, and like another RPG system to build upon, because it's so fun to get those skills. They have the weapon skills from like the weapons in 7 is kind of like what they're sort of doing, but they don't really change your job. They just give you new abilities to use. I want like, no, like I'm now a range caster. No, I'm like a tank style class, or I'm like some like support job. Like I want to see that come back for sure. I don't know if that's what you want, but I suspect it is. So I'm kind of on board with that. Or definitely on board with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with like defined characters with preset jobs if you gain new skills regularly and they're interesting. But and of course I have to mention it, Monolith Soft, Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Um, I,
Yes.
I thought it did the job system really, really well. Where there's a lot of really unique, archetypes that you could play as. So I would love. I mean, it is. It's just very addicting to like mix and match, gain levels in a job, switch jobs. It's fun. So yeah, I would love to see a job system. It just adds another layer.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to them doing that. And even if they have a new take, I'd love to see them try and do like a new take on the job system as well. Because when I think jobs, I mean, to me, it's like Final Fantasy was like the first to really expand upon and really captivate me with that. And I know it's been taken by a lot of other, you know, like even if they did like promotion type stuff like strategy RPGs do, where it's like your class will evolve over time. So like you start as like the base class, and there's like two more advanced levels. I'd even like take something like that over, just everyone's predefined to like one fixed role, and maybe they get a few new skills, but like they don't like radically change, to any degree. So yeah, love to see that. So we'll see if they end up doing that. Okay, but again, thank you so much for joining me, Stealth. Thank you everyone in chat who is participating. And yeah, it was great having you on. And I imagine at some point we will have some more Monolith Soft news at some point. I mean, as we get hopefully closer to the Switch successor,
Yeah.
who knows how close we really are to it, with all the reports. But I imagine, the further we get away from Xenoblade 3, the closer we get to a new Monolith Soft project, whether that's a continuation in that universe, or we'll see something another other fantasy project, the real-time combat one that we've heard nothing about since like it was first revealed on their job posting site with
A long
concept
time
art.
ago.
Who
Mhm.
knows? So thank you again, everyone, and until next time, have a great week and see you soon.